Hello, welcome back to the Story Hour podcast, Voices Unscripted, Stories Rewritten, with your host, Sara, a registered counselor, a certified grief educator, and a certified life coach. But more importantly, I'm a lover of the human experience, and I'm really passionate about getting to know you on a soul level. So, we are back for another episode. I know it's been a little bit. I have taken a break, which I'll get into in another episode for you and give you a rundown on what's been happening with my life and behind the scenes. But today I have Margaret Pineda, who is a massage therapist and breathwork facilitator who helps people reconnect with their bodies through mindfulness and body centered practices as a path to healing and personal growth. Her work is grounded in nervous system regulation, embodied awareness, and the belief that our greatest potential unfolds when we learn to slow down and listen inward. After years of clinical work, Margaret's path expanded into breathwork and community healing spaces, guiding clients beyond symptom relief toward deeper self-trust and lasting transformation. She also writes about the journey from rescuer to lighthouse, exploring what it means to shift from fixing and overgiving into grounded presence, clear boundaries, and quiet leadership in both work and life. Hi, Margaret. Welcome.
Sarah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. How are you doing? You excited?
I am excited to share, wherever this takes us. Just excited to share my story and anything that can help your listeners just, live at their highest
hmm
potential, whatever that might
Yeah,
be.
I love that. Yeah, so for anyone listening, of course, we're just going to have a conversation. Like you heard in the introduction, Margaret is a massage therapist, but also a breathwork facilitator. I've known Margaret for a long time now. Oh my gosh, when did we meet? 2018, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
2018 maybe. I was going through all my stuff and then I went to see Margaret for massage and we just hit it off and had a lot of what do you call it? Like relatability, I guess. And anyway, so that's how we met. I guess that's 8 years, 7 years, however long it's been. And so I'm really excited to have you on to share your story and have listeners to learn about what you do and how you got to where you are today, Margaret. And so let's just jump into it. Let's go into the story a little bit. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, fun facts, anything you want listeners to know about you before we dive into your actual story?
Yeah. Well, I'm Margaret. I'm a mom of two. My kids are 6 and 9. I'm in the Vancouver area of BC, Canada. Massage therapist for about 13 years now. I've been doing breath work for a few years, but breath work was introduced to me back in 2019 is when I first did it myself. Um, Fun facts, I picked up the guitar a year or two ago, learning to sing and play and do something for myself because a lot of the things that I wanted to learn were like more geared to helping other people. So now I'm just focusing on things that bring beauty into my own life. And I love bubble tea and cacao.
Love it. Love it. Love it. And I love that last part you shared about filling your cup and doing what fills you because we need to fill our cups as well. And that's important. Okay, let's start off with RMT. And you said, how long did you say? 16 years? Did I hear that correctly?
2012 is when I started.
Okay, so
Almost 14.
14, almost
Yeah.
40. Yeah. Yeah, a long time. Well, let's start there. I'm curious, what led you to pursue a career as RMT? Did you always know that's what you wanted to do? Or was there like a specific experience or a moment that you're like, yeah, this is it?
Yeah, actually, I was in my early 20s. I had a desk job and a it was just I knew it wasn't everything I wanted. There were just some things just were not aligned with my values, the way that direction was going, and I actually just wanted to get completely out of like the sort of that office. I don't know what you'd call that. Called like sitting at a desk working, which just wasn't for me and my body. It was actually that was when it was first started to speak to me through like really bad low back pain and the shoulders at the desk. But I was starting to get migraines at work. I just knew that my body was just saying like this is not the route for you. So that's actually what led me to explore healthcare. I actually was seeing an RMT myself, and she suggested it. So I ended up leaving that and leaving corporate, I guess you could say, and going into healthcare. And my body feels so much more healthy at 41 than it did at 20 because I get to move every day and I'm not sitting. So, yeah, that's how that all started.
Yeah, that's really cool. And yeah, I can relate to that too. The desk jobs, it's not a forever thing.
Maybe not for
That's
everyone, but
sorry?
it's definitely necessary. We need it to create the world we live in, but it just for my own body, I knew it
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were working, you obviously you said you were seeing an RMT yourself. And so what was it about that kind of intrigued you?
I think I had an interest in health and helping people at the time, and there was a meaning in it because I knew that I would be, you know, just serving people in like a way that helped them feel better. So that was the start of it. Um,
Mhm,
Becoming an RMT, it's funny that they teach you everything is black and white, but once you get into the field, everything is gray. And
mhm,
so I guess getting into the work, and I was really gung ho as a new grad and like, oh, let me just help everyone. Let me show you how what I can do. And I quickly burned out, but I think I started to realize there was a lot more going on with people's pain than what they may have even realized. But I just started to notice patterns because I'm kind of good at picking stuff. Okay, like people, I just noticed people with chronic pain had certain things going on in their life, maybe like they would just disclose that as we were working together. There was more stress in the background. And I just started to put it together that there was so much more that was beyond assessing their physical body. But at the time, I think I felt really boxed in and frustrated because I didn't have the tools at the time, being maybe a couple of years into my practice of how to help and kind of how to go deeper into those things.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so where would you say you are now? Because I think when we think RMT for listeners who are listening, because there's so many different types
Mhm.
of treatments, and I'm not fully familiar with all of them too, but could you just share with everyone who's listening of like what you do and how you
Sure.
incorporated these new tools? Because I know you've done a lot and
I
bring a
have
lot of that in
explored
there.
many modalities related to the body, mind, and like emotions and spirit. But I think with my massage therapy practice, I still do like relaxation and Swedish massage. I incorporate a lot of myofascial work, which is like no oil, really working with the connective tissue because it stores a lot. And I also primarily work with the nervous system through craniosacral therapy. So that's a big thing that people come to me now for. And that's more working with the central nervous system, the brain, the spinal cord. Craniosacral has to do more with the fluid that surrounds the brain and the spinal cord. And there's this inherent movement as a practitioner that we can feel. And that movement can tell us a lot about the vitality in somebody's system and the state that it's in. Is it protective? Is it guarded? Is it collapsed? Is it dissociated? It can tell us a lot. But craniosacral therapy is a lot more to do with just witnessing and allowing the unwinding to happen, which is very in line with the philosophy that I have embraced over the last decade, from trying to fix to just allowing and witnessing with presence. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And so just for again, anyone who's listening, when you do the craniosacral, that's a whole separate session, or do you incorporate that into your like massage therapy or a bit of both?
That's a good question. Some people come straight just for craniosacral therapy where they're fully clothed, face up on the table. And I have also patients who love the hands-on touch, who find that grounding and nurturing, and we combine the two because craniosacral therapy is a very light, precise touch. It can be as light as like a nickel on your skin, but it's very precise in that it's aimed. We're feeling for inherent movements all over the body of this craniosacral fluid, and the way it's flowing, the way and where it's not flowing, you can feel that that's an area that's blocked, and that's a place that we bring our attention to. So it's really craniosacral therapy is a lot to do with stillness and feeling safe to just be. So I get a lot of people who, really we live in a world of fight or flight and doing and hustling. And there's a lot of people that come in and it really feels like an unsafe place to just lie down and rest for an hour. And it's a really good observation for them to see that because with craniosacral therapy, you're learning to feel safe and rest. And so it's this relationship with stillness and peace that craniosacral therapy is great for. And for me, we haven't touched it yet, but breath work is the opposite. It's feeling alive. It's your relationship with life. And it's much more active, the process. So I like having both because both are
Yeah.
necessary. Yeah.
For sure, yeah, which they're so different, but yeah, it's really cool experiences that let you to drop into that body, and you're right, we do live in fight or flight, and most of us don't know what it's like or haven't felt that safety to be in that stillness, to be in that solitude, and that can be really uncomfortable, but that's where the growth happens and that's where the healing happens is when we allow ourselves to be in that stillness. I've done craniosacral a couple of times and it's hard for me to put into words. That's why I was like, I'll just get you to share it. It's felt. It's really hard to put it into words.
Yeah, they say you go into this brainwave state of theta, which is that state right before you sleep. So often I'll tell people it's like you're almost asleep, but you're still awake. And that's often what people feel like. Like they know what's going on, but they're not quite fully there, but they are
Mhm.
feeling rested and restored.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I think it's so nice to hear about different modalities and different treatments and how different practitioners work and what you offer. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, Yeah, let's get into a bit more, I guess, of your background in terms of like health. On our call, we talked about quite a bit, and we've been talking for years. And so, talking about health, because obviously that's a big part of it. We talk about the mental, the emotional health, the spiritual health, the physical health, and how they're all so connected. And I know you're very much about that mind body connection and really slowing down and all of that. And so I would love for you to share a bit about that story. And so why don't we start off with the health in terms of you mentioned anxiety. Talk to us about that anxiety that you experienced. You said after your first child, if I remember correctly, you were new to motherhood, your first time mom, you have a new baby, you have a new life. What did that anxiety look like for you, and how would you describe that time in your life?
Yeah, that was a real I felt like a loss of freedom in that first year, 2 years. It's just such a big change to be responsible for another little human being. And then all of a sudden, it's not just about yourself. It's like, like juggling a career, making sure you're putting a roof over your child's head and yours, and just thinking about my husband for some reason. And that's the crazy thing is like I didn't never really had anxiety about. I think it was always there, but it really got magnified with my daughter. And I had this irrational fear that my husband was just gonna die and I was gonna raise my daughter all by myself. And I was just like almost mentally preparing myself. Okay, I could be a single mom one day and taking care of my child. And I didn't know, like rationally, where that fear was coming from. But there is a story, which I'll get to around that. So this anxiety was there, and I also started to develop eczema around that time. And I had never had skin issues, but I developed eczema around both my wrists and tried creams, went to the naturopath, did like elimination diets. And this was all while also like strange because it started right when I went back to work after mat leave, so about a year into having my daughter. And it started after I had said to myself, okay, now I'm going to start treating myself better and I'm going to start making healthy choices. And then the eczema started. So I was like, what the heck? What's going on? My body's betraying me. And so the eczema and the anxiety were kind of playing out at the same time. And as this was going on, it kind of led me on my health journey, like seeing what I could do to heal, with the creams and like naturopath and food. I lost 10 pounds, but it didn't help the anxiety, and the eczema was still there. But I started to notice that the eczema would get worse the more I was stressed. So I started to use it as like a reading. It's like, okay, yes, my body's telling me I'm under stress. Um, Even though I was so frustrated, I was starting to see the correlation. It wasn't random. And during that time, also, I was exploring bioenergy healing. I went to Costa Rica while I had the anxiety. I went there to learn energy work for myself, but also for other people. Um, that was also crazy because the day I decided to make that big investment, a check just landed in my hands that day. So it's like everything was lined up. It was
Mm.
wild. So while I was there and I was telling a few of my classmates what was happening with my wrist. And then we went back into some of my backstory, and I had heart surgery when I was like 1 or 2. And one of my classmates said, "That's exactly where you were strapped to the gurney." I'm like, "Oh my God, it was." It was, and that was a very, stressful, traumatic time, even though everyone had their best interest for me. When I went in for the surgery, I was told by my parents that everybody was distraught. My parents were upset watching me. I was crying out for them, of course. I was 1 or 2 strapped. So my body remembered, like, and it was just like over 2 years, I made this connection between, okay, like the helplessness and the lack of freedom and feeling unsupported. There were all these feelings associated with this event that were not just me, it was also what my family was feeling. It was generational. It was like there was inherited trauma. The crazy thing was, um, the eczema, the story with like the anxiety I had around my husband dying and me raising my child alone really, when I looked back generationally, my grandma on my mom's side um, lost her husband overnight because he was on a boat in the Philippines and there was a
Mm.
storm and his body was never recovered. And my grandma, who had 4 children, all of a sudden had to start working and, financially supporting her 4 kids like overnight.
Mm.
So it was crazy when I made that connection. I'm like, okay, that irrational fear of my husband dying. Yeah, that makes
Is
sense. And
this
actually,
is this all happening in Costa Rica?
this was
Or the
kind This was like Costa Rica was kind of like a year into my journey. Yeah,
just so you had your baby,
yeah,
you were on mat leave, and then after a year, you're kinda back into work, and that's when you started noticing the eczema, so it was happening at
mhm,
the same time,
yeah, and
right?
then
And
I
then you went to Costa Rica to do the
I did,
bioenergy, and it
and then
was
I
there that you made that first link and that first connection to the eczema on your wrist and where it was, and it linked
where it
it
was.
to when you were getting
Yes.
surgery when you were younger.
Yes, and to my grandma, I think that kinda was in there, and then also, I was going in for bioenergy training, but while I was there, we were doing breath work to explore the chakras. That's how I discovered the power of the breath. At the time, I wasn't ready to do that kind of work. I was just learning bioenergy, but it was the breath work that actually opened me up and um, like an old trauma that I had experienced. I was keeping a secret for like 30 something years at that time. Came up with breath work, and that's where it hit me while I was in Costa Rica. When I was a child, I experienced a sexual trauma and I
Mhm.
didn't tell anybody about it. And I also kind of downplayed what actually happened. Like, so that had a lot of layers. And I think initially the eczema anxiety started when I said I'm ready to make healthy choices because it's like, okay, you're ready to go there in the past and finally face this thing. So
Is that what you believe happened?
I
Is
think
that
that's why. And then so When I went to Costa Rica, I was actually pregnant with my second child. My daughter was a C-section. My second one, I really wanted to try for a vaginal birth after C-section. I hired a doula and a birthing coach. And actually, that's where I felt safe enough to share what happened to me, to my birthing coach. And she just really encouraged me not to keep it a secret anymore. And so there was a day that I finally came that I was taking a walk with my mom, and she was actually the one I was the most afraid to tell. But
Mhm.
the day that it happened, the day that I decided this is the day I'm gonna tell her, and I told her. And I told her in a way where it was like, "Mom, I don't expect you to do anything with what I'm about to share with you. I just need to tell you because it's part of my healing process." And kid you not, I had eczema every day for 2 years after we had that conversation, and it was like my deepest, darkest secret that I was revealing to my mom. It's like this weight lifted, like, I felt so much lighter, like, all the shame and, like, everything I was hiding was just phew. I'm like, "That's it, I have no more secrets." The very next day, my eczema was gone. 2 years with eczema. Gone. It was like that was, like, the most powerful thing my body showed me was, like, it's smart, and we might feel like we're broken or betrayed, but if we trust the unfolding, trust the journey, and know that, like, it might not happen overnight because that thing is still there because 'cause you're still in the process of learning something from it. Doesn't mean that it's always gonna get better too, because I forgot about the process of healing. I forgot, like, for a bit there, I was like, "Okay, is it gone yet? Is it gone yet?" But as
Mhm.
soon as I let that go and I just focused more on the other parts of my healing, like the trauma, um, that that really helped me. So not only did the eczema go away overnight, I was also pregnant with my second child, and almost ready to give birth around that time. And I did have like a vaginal birth that second time, and I feel like my body just felt more safe. And I had people in my circle that I felt more supported. And so I think that that's a possibility for women too, is like if we can cultivate that trust in our body. Like we don't have to give our power away. Like we can have the births that we want. But I do believe my daughter was meant to be a C-section, like so that I could have that second experience. But
Right.
yeah,
Uh, Wow. So much there. Thank you for sharing that. I know that can be sometimes hard to talk about and touch on. There are some sensitive topics from your story, but very relatable, just with things from the past. And like you said, I think a lot of times when you were like, I'm ready to heal, I'm ready to get healthy, like I'm ready to get past that. And that's when everything started showing up. And I do think that life does work that way when we're ready to grow and to evolve and we're asking for these things from, the universe, from God, and then it'll show you the parts of you that still need support, that still need attention, that still need healing. And so for you, it was that, where the eczema was, and then also the sexual trauma that you mentioned as well. And we have to go to those spaces as dark and heavy as they are in order to be able to work through them, heal them, and then come through them on the other end of it. And it doesn't mean that you forget it, but your body starts to release that grip and hold on it. And you mentioned shame is such a big one, which we will get to that conversation because, like you said, you shared it with your mom. You've been keeping this secret inside you for so long, and all of a sudden your eczema was gone. And if I remember correctly, you told me till this day, it never came back. Is that
hasn't
correct?
been back.
Yeah.
That's the crazy part. I mean, I've
Okay.
had other things happen since then, and I really I'm human, and I'm
Of
gonna
course.
disclose, like, of course, like, that went away, but then my body will show me in another way that I'm working through something new, so it's
Mhm.
not but I don't have the same, grip and control over trying to make the symptom go away. It's more a curiosity now of like, "Oh, I wonder what I'm working through and what my body's
Mhm.
sharing with me now.
What was that experience like to be in Costa Rica, or even if it happened at home, and to connect what was happening in your present life and then making that connection to the past? For people who are listening who are new to this and haven't gone to therapy or haven't had the mind body connection, and there's nothing wrong with that by any means, but if you haven't experienced that or don't understand that, like I would be really curious if you can share what that was like and how did you make that correlation? What
Oh,
was it?
I was really stunned when my friend or my classmate, like, first mentioned it. I'm like, "Oh my god." Like, it took me a moment, and I was also stunned for, like, a day or 2, uh, when that memory came up. I was lucky that I was in a place where I was surrounded by very supportive people, and we were going deep into the work, because I think if that memory had come up here and I wasn't in that environment of healing, like, all day, it would have probably taken me longer. I don't know what that journey would have looked like, but I know that I was in a state of shock, like, when I first found out, like, where the correlation with this, my surgery, but also the memory, and, like, the grief of, like, holding that for so long, and the shame of, like, I can't believe I did that to myself. I can't believe I abandoned myself for like 30 years or whatever, 20, like however long, like that. There were so many layers to my feelings, that, like, even after that trip, that was 6, 7 months after was when I finally told my mom. From the time that the memory came up, I had more sessions around bioenergy and talking to my birthing coach, and I can't even remember, other things that I needed to feel safe enough to share. Like, that wasn't gonna happen. Like, the most vulnerable thing for me was, like, sharing this with my mom. What if I share this with my mom and she doesn't support me, or she, like, it's not, yeah, yeah, it was just, like, really vulnerable for me, and I totally get how that could take people time, um, and that you have to have resources in place to help, because I was just lucky to be in that environment. Yeah.
Almost like I believe that those things happen at the right time because you were held and you were supported and it was safe. Our body knows, like you mentioned, it's so intelligent and it knows that, you are safe and you're supported for it to come through. Also, if you can touch, you said there's a lot of feelings and a lot of emotions around those times. If you could name those, what
Mhm.
were you feeling?
The feelings that I was carrying related to the
Yeah, you
whole.
said you're carrying a
uh,
lot, like, around
yeah,
that time. I'm just curious if you can touch on those just again to paint a picture for people who are listening of, like, how
yeah,
deep this goes
yeah.
and how vulnerable it is, but also you came through it on the other side of it, and so really wanna just kind of yeah,
Yeah. There was
paint a
fear.
picture for people.
Yeah, fear, helplessness, guilt, shame, um, grief,
Mhm.
anger. Like, I think all the main emotions were there. But it made me realize that there was this lens, this filter of helplessness that was there my whole life, that showed up because when that all played out as a child, I didn't feel supported. I just didn't feel like I had the grown-ups there that could listen to me, so I kept it all inside. I was that hyper independent kid, that grew up hyper independent adult, showed up in control tendencies, like trying to control to keep the anxiety at bay. And the anxiety was really because I felt unsupported, right? So I have to do everything myself and make sure, like, everything is like there for me, like the way I want it. Like, I can't rely on other people. So I think it made me realize that I had a really deep lack of trust and a lack of intimacy, not just like in a sexual sense, but like with people,
Mhm.
and this desire to get close. But um, that was the beginning of realizing that also that experience was all meant to play out. I wouldn't have gone on my healing journey otherwise. And And that it's almost like the universe planted that experience so that later in life as an adult, I could reclaim all the things I felt were taken from me. And this last decade was about like opening up to trust, to intimacy, to ease, so and patience and self-compassion, all the things I didn't have for myself. And it's
Mm,
still a process because we're
yeah.
human, right? So I have zero regrets and all that happened. It was supposed to happen to take me to today.
Mhm. Yeah, wow. That's so much there. It seems like in such a short amount of time too that that all happened in the grand scheme of things. It seems a really short amount of time, even 6 months from when you got back to when you told your mom. Like that's yeah, it's not that much time.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the funny thing is once I went through that experience, I'm just a Scorpio by nature, so I'm deep by nature, but then I went through a phase in my practice where I'm like, "What happened to you?" I'm like, let me dive deep and like, figure this out." But it probably lasted a few years of kind of my intuition opening up and like
From that
hyper.
time, you mean?
Yeah, it's like kind of around there. I'm like, okay, I can see how deeply the body remembers. There's a story, so let me like attune to you and like let's like figure this out. But like from there to now and where I am, it's more like, yeah, something probably happened, but do I need to know? If they want to tell me, sure. But like, this is all about just being present with what's in your body and what's here with you right now. I don't need to go digging in the past. So things have changed a lot since that phase of being
Right.
massage therapist and exploring energy work. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. And so I guess, after you told your mom, you said your eczema went away. What did that feel like? And what was that? Because you had been dealing with that for 2 years. I'm just curious of now you kind of went through it. You put yourself in those spaces and situations and you almost relived those experiences because when they come up, you have to sit with them and you're in it. And so now here you are on the other side of that, if you will. What was that like after you told your mom? Like, what came up for you, and what was that experience like?
It's like so much relief and lightness. And like now everyone knows, even my husband knows that, even my brothers know like what happened. So I share it more openly now. I feel like it was just a big relief. And even before the eczema went away, that night, I already knew it was going to go away. There was like this deep belief in
Oh,
me. It was like, it's gone, it's done. It's this feeling of like, it's done.
you
And
knew
then
that before it even went away.
before it went away, like the night I told my mom, I'm like, this was the story that this was all about, was to get me to this moment of finally sharing my deepest, darkest secret with the one person I didn't want to share it with. And that
Mhm.
happened. I told my mom, and I just knew it was done. So I don't know whether that belief is what made it went away or if it was gonna go away on its own, but like I really believe the story or the path it was leading me on for that 2 years.
Yeah, so it's almost like you had that conviction, and I think it's probably a little bit of everything,
Yeah.
right? It probably was, and I think what we believe, it holds power. It really does hold power in our life. What we say, what we think, what we do, all of that, it does play a factor. And so you are so convicted, like, wow, this is the link. And I finally have recognized that and I've attended to it. And now I'm almost breaking free of it. He's literally breaking free of it because you said you were strapped to there, right? And so it almost feels like that conviction was this was it. And I'm curious, how was that received? Because all of us, I think, can carry a lot of shame around situations and experiences and things that happen in our life. I know I've done that. And I think we're just so afraid of how we're going to be perceived, how we're going to be seen. Are we going to be held or are we going to be judged and criticized and let go? I think it's one of our biggest fears because, again, going back to the basic of basics, we're wired for connection. So it's like, what is this person going to think of me? How are they going to see me? And are they going to blame me? Like you mentioned, there's so much going on in your head. I'm curious of how that was received when you told your mom.
When I told my mom, she was surprised that it had happened, but, she was supportive of me, and she was actually showed concern, so it was
Mm.
actually not like, "Oh my god, that happened to you," like, it was
Mhm.
not the way I feared it would play out, and that was my fear, and my birthing coach did say, like, "You're doing this for you, not for her reaction. That doesn't matter. You're telling her because it's part of your healing process."
Mhm.
So I was very clear on that at the beginning when I told my mom, "I'm telling you this as part of my healing process." I forgot how I worded it, but it's like I didn't need anything from her. Just her listening was
Mm.
part of my healing. Yeah.
Right. So you already went into that, and regardless of what her reaction was, you knew what your intention was, and that was enough for you to go forward and share it, and yeah.
Yeah, it's like my intention was this is not a secret anymore. Like I'm
Yeah.
not gonna hold this all by myself. Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah, I
yeah.
can imagine how freeing that is, because again, you're carrying that all on your own, carrying that load of the mental load and the physical load of that. It's a lot. And a lot of us do go around carrying this stuff, and then it leaks into other areas of our life. Like you said, physical health, it showed up for you. This is your personal story, showed up in your health, right? In the anxiety, in the eczema, but it can show up in other areas like chronic
Mhm.
illness and disease. It's all linked. And this is why this conversation is really important for anyone who's listening too, is like how important it is. I'm sure you've heard it. If you've not, how crucial and how important it is to understand that our mental, emotional, and physical health is so interconnected. And when one is off, it's going to impact the other. Our vessel, it just is. And things that we can't conceptualize and we don't even remember, the body remembers. I'm sure you've heard of the body keeps a score. It really does. Everything's stored, our emotions, our feelings, our trauma, our grief, everything is stored in our body. And it's going to show up in different ways, and it's going to keep coming up until you attend to that, until you actually go there and work through that and acknowledge it. And on this whole conversation of shame too, I love Brené Brown talks a lot about shame. And I remember when I first got introduced to her and knew about who she was, I really resonated with what she was saying around. I actually wrote some of her quotes down, but she said, shame thrives off secrecy, silence, and judgment.
Exactly.
And
Oh, I had all 3.
yeah, this is why we're having this conversation. And Margaret, again, thank you so much for opening it up, because I think it is such a vulnerable conversation, but I think it's also a really important one. And it's important for us to be having this and talking about that. But yeah, that in itself, I'll say it again, shame thrives. It loves secrecy, silence, and judgment. And that's just, if you think of it that way, it's so true. And right away, you're like, yeah, that's exactly what it was. And until you let go of that, it starts to have less of a grip on you. It starts to have less of a hold. And shames, if you think of it as like another external thing, it starts to have less control over you, because now you're in more control. You know, the more that you start talking about it, the more that you start speaking about it, the more that you work through it and acknowledge that, you know what, this has happened, it's in the past, it doesn't define me. And now you can start moving forward with it. Um, she also, there's a couple more it's going to read out for anyone who's listening, is like, shame cannot survive being spoken. It cannot tolerate having words wrapped around it, right? Same thing. Shame cannot survive being spoken. So the more you speak about it, the more you start having control over it, and then you have one up on it.
And the funny thing is when I was at my bioenergy training, after this all landed and it kind of I realized what happened, of course, the very next day, our teacher said, "Okay, now you're gonna tell us that one thing that you don't wanna tell anyone. Tell us." It's like that. So got everybody talking about, like, that thing, right? So that's actually where I shared and where it had less power over me. It's like I told a
Mm,
group of people, like, what happened, and, as direct as it worked. Just
mhm,
having all these people hold space for me and listen without saying anything, like, I didn't need anything from them, it was just their ears. Just listen, and I think the listening, that's where healing is, whether you're listening to yourself or you're listening to others. Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing that we all want, whether you want to admit it or not. We all want to be seen. We want to be heard. We want to be valued. We want to be understood. You may not agree with everything, but you can still hold that empathy for someone. And you just said it so beautifully. We just want to be listened to. And that's all it is. And I talk a lot about this in the grief world is like, we don't want to be fixed, right? We just want someone to listen to us and say, wow, that really fucking sucks. Or I can see how much this is hurting you. And I'm so sorry that happened to you. Sometimes that's all it is. We don't need the fixing or the meaning making, which I think humans are sometimes wired for that, right? But it's just like, again, going back to that, we just want to be heard. We just want to be held, like, and listened to and understood. And she says two more that I'm going to read out, which I just think are so important. And really for anyone listening is to reflect on them as well. Is like, she says something else along the lines of if we can share our story with someone who responds with empathy and understanding, shame can't survive.
Mhm.
And same thing, right? Just testament to what you shared in your story. Then she goes, if we're going to find our way back to each other, we have to understand and know empathy because empathy is the antidote to shame.
I love it.
And yeah, right? Those are just so powerful. And on this conversation of shame, I wanted to mention those and talk about them because I think they're so powerful. So for anyone who is carrying a lot, might be an invitation to lean into that and do some work around that, perhaps in whatever way that feels right for you. But yeah. Do you have anything else you want to share around that, Margaret, around shame, around just this whole conversation about the mind body connection in relation to what you just shared with the eczema, the anxiety, all of it before we move into breath work now? Just to
Yeah.
wrap
Well, I
it.
think it's just the mindset of, mindfulness is a big part that came in to meet those feelings of shame and like the really hard places with just kindness and curiosity. And,
Mm,
it's like when someone once said, it's like the energy of a smile. That's all it is. The energy of a smile. If you can meet
mhm,
those places, that's all you don't need to do anything with the shame. And you don't have to you don't have to pick something positive to replace it because we can hold that and we can hold something new at the same time that we're planting a seed with. The the
mhm,
the mistake a lot of people make with healing is they'll think that they need to heal it and move on to something better for themselves. But really healing is just you can hold it all without rushing it along. So that energy of a smile, kindness and curiosity, if you can meet any part of you that you don't like with that attitude without trying to change it, that's enough.
mm. Beautiful. Love it. What a great end to that, to wrap that up. Okay, let's talk about breath work because it's a big part of your last couple of years. And so again, I think it's become so much more mainstream. To be honest, I never knew what breathwork was until I was in counseling school, and I had a colleague in my cohort who was a breathwork facilitator, and that's when I realized what it was. Because when you think breathwork, I'm like, oh yeah, like box breathing, or take one deep inhale in, hold, and then breathe out. I didn't know there was an actual modality or a practice, but like I know I'm familiar with conscious connected breath work. And
Mhm.
so, again, just for listeners who are listening, for anyone who's new to this, has no idea what breath work is, how would you explain what breath work actually is and what
Sure.
does it do?
So breath work is simply the act of consciously watching your breath and changing it for a specific purpose. So there are many forms of breath work. As you mentioned, box breathing, right? Coherent breathing. There's so many styles and they all have a purpose. So that's all considered breath work. But the breath work you're speaking to, like you mentioned, conscious connected breathing is one style of breath work, and that's what I practice, and that's what we hold community containers for, and I do private sessions. And that breath work, if we're going to talk about conscious connected breath work, is
Yeah.
more of a transformational tool. It's like a flashlight. We start with this very gentle, rhythmic breathwork pattern that tends to put you into a altered state, and in that state you have direct access to the subconscious and to your higher mind or higher awareness, so you can get insights into your life and your purpose. But the big part is, because you're bypassing the mind and you're going right into the body, the breath, it will start to change, and it will start to, with this pattern, show different patterns in your inhale and exhale that paint a story. So if I backtrack a little bit, this there is a story in how we inhale and exhale. As a conscious connected breathwork facilitator, we can read the breath patterns, and it allows us to help somebody create a new story. So with every state, every emotion, there is a breath pattern associated to that. And
Interesting.
also, if we experience trauma, our breath changes in that moment. And oftentimes we will hold our breath in the moment that it happens, when we go, if something happens and we're shocked, right? It's just naturally our breath becomes shallow over time. Um, because breathing deeply means we're going to feel deeply. And breathing deeply is also a metaphor for taking in all of life. So we all tend to breathe shallow with stuff that happens because we haven't learned how to move through that in a healthy way. So with conscious connected breathing, it tends to we start to rev the engine with this gentle rhythmic breath pattern, but then the breath starts to breathe you, and depending on your intention for your session, your breath will change and show the patterns that have not been completed, that are ready to be witnessed. And as a facilitator, we can offer that awareness of when something is changing in the breath, that has an opportunity for you to step in and make an empowered choice to breathe differently in that moment than you habitually do. That creates the interchange so that the outer just happens naturally. And it's pretty direct. It's like, I could say with, like, if there was something really big and heavy, big feelings that we don't want to get into with something that happened, that's like a strawberry on a plate, and we can talk about the strawberry all day and say, this is where it came from, this is what it tastes like. But breathwork's like, here, taste it. And it's, are you willing to taste it now and just like take in the whole experience? Because it's
Mhm.
not it's not talking about it. It's like you're making a choice. You're inviting it into your system right there and then. So it's quite direct, but I love it. Um,
Mhm.
it really is healing for our relationship to life, and the way we can limit the good stuff too. It's not just the hard stuff like shame and fear and grief and anger. We can limit joy, we can limit love, we can limit intimacy. And so those things can show up limited in the breath as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious. There's so many things there, but I'm
Mm.
curious before we go into anything else, maybe can you walk us through what is the actual technique used in conscious connected breath work? Like, what's the
Yeah.
process and how do we breathe intentionally in a session? If you can maybe just even demonstrate to us what that
Sure.
looks like physically for anyone who's watching this to know what that is so they can get a better understanding because I think a lot of times it's
Yeah.
hard to understand it and grasp what it looks like and doing
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I think before I jump into that, like physically, the biggest benefit of this type of breath work is we are regulating the nervous system. So with the breath, we tend to be in fight or flight. So this breath just, it knows how to balance you where you need to be. If the breath is a bit lazy, it knows how to kind of bring you into a bit more enlivenedness and like energy, feeling more open and to receive. And if we are the type to like go, go, go and breathe too much, this breath has a way of bringing us back into ease and gentleness. So the breath, you can relate it to, we want to breathe openly and easily. So how open and easy we breathe is how open and easy we meet life, I guess. Okay. So the breath pattern for conscious connected breathing is in and out through an open and relaxed mouth. And we're filling a little bit deeper than we normally breathe, inhaling a little deeper than we normally breathe. And we're exhaling like the breath is just falling out and we're surrendering it. And then we start to connect it so that the inhale and the exhale have no pauses and it's one continuous circle. So I'll show you what that looks like.
Mm.
So it's a really gentle breath.
Mhm.
There are other types of conscious connected breathing that are more like holotropic breath, and that can be more of the and that is not the style that I do.
Right.
This style is much more gentle and balanced, and I think the body really responds well to that. And
Mhm.
yeah,
So for anyone who's well, if you're not watching but you're listening, you should probably watch it. But so basically, we're obviously breathing right now, but it's one cycle. You're not stopped. There's no pauses. So basically, for a duration of time, is it 45 minutes, I think? And then you're
well,
just breathing.
anywhere. Yeah, anywhere from like 20 breaths to like 45 minutes of breath. But the important thing is there's always a period of relaxation after.
Mhm.
And that is super important to bring the
But I
system back.
mean, for anyone who's listening to understand, like when you're actually breathing, you are breathing for that full time. I mean, you can stop obviously, but the purpose of this to get deeper into the body is that you're breathing like how Margaret demonstrated. So you're breathing in, breathing out, but in a loop. Like you're not, there's no
Yeah,
pauses. That's how you get deeper into it, right? That's what
yeah.
it can get
It
confusing there. That's I just want to emphasize this
that's
part
what
and make
brings
it
about
clear.
that sort of altered state and the closed taking out the pauses it tend like on an energetic standpoint tends to build the energy so that more can come to the surface. At least that's the idea of it. So
Right.
yeah, it doesn't mean that you will be in an altered state the first time you do this because
Hmm.
everybody's different and that altered state can be really deep and it can be really light too. So every session is very different. It can be very emotional, can be very spiritual, can be very physical. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I've done it, I don't know, a few times. If I'm being fully honest and transparent, I find it hard. I think I've shared that with you. It's not my favorite practice or my favorite modality, the conscious connected breath work. I've done it, and what's come out on the other side has been, whoa, like very transformative. But I do struggle with it. I do find it hard to breathe in that rhythmic cycle for that long and to keep that. And while I'm in it, my brain starts going, well, you're not doing it right. Then I start feeling shitty because I'm like, well, I can't get it right. I'm not doing it right. So that also happens.
So
Um,
common. So
just to
common.
just to share that, yeah, like I just want to have a really open honest conversation about breathwork because again, it is so mainstream and I don't think everyone practices properly and people don't understand. It's not just like you're going there and all this stuff's going to happen. It's very vulnerable. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Right, like it's a very vulnerable space and we can be hard on ourselves. And so anyways, I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, I find it hard. I do find it a bit difficult to breathe like that, and at first I thought it was just me, but then I've heard it's actually common and not everyone can go into like that deep of a breath, if that makes sense. Are
Yeah,
you
we can't
following?
totally we can't set an expectation and compare ourselves to
Mhm.
like our neighbors when we're in a breathwork session with other people and have an agenda with how we breathe because
Mhm.
where you breathe and your capacity is different for the next person. And there's so
Mhm.
much there's like the fascial tension, there's like the emotions that are containing our inhale. Not everybody has the same capacity in the beginning. And we
Mhm.
all have things that are just stopping us from breathing fully and openly. And
Mhm.
that's okay to be right where you are, and then also to notice the attitude you have towards your own breath, because that can be very, very revealing of how we feel about ourselves and
Yeah.
the way we
I
do
think
life.
it can be hard to, again, going to those spaces. When something starts coming up, it's really easy to shut that down because it feels too overwhelming. It seems too heavy. Um, but we also know that you need to go through that to be able to work through it. But I'm curious why, again, this is for education purposes, of course, right?
Mhm.
It's a big part of what I like to do on the show too. But why do emotions or memories sometimes come up during a session, even when someone isn't consciously thinking about them?
Yeah, because
Mm.
it I guess because we're working directly with the body, the breath, the nervous system, um, and we're taking the mind takes a break in all this and it's just an observer. That's the beauty, but the directness of this work is that it's an invitation you're to open those places and to explore. I don't know the science exactly behind it, but it seems like when we invite this continuous breath, and we are doing our best to just inhale more deeply, but we're not trying too hard. That's the thing. Like, but a lot of people like play with that in being. You think of it as just you're just playing and experimenting when you're first doing this kind of breath work. Um,
Mhm.
but I think our there is a point where the breath starts to breathe you, where it starts to become a little automatic, and then that's where the breath starts to change because
What
the
do you
breath.
mean by that? It starts to breathe you.
Okay, that's a great question. Sometimes the breath will become shallow in certain places. Sometimes the breath will start to breathe too really fast, or like something about the breath isn't open and free anymore, because that's great. It means we found something and something is coming up to be processed or witnessed. And all we have to do is keep breathing through that. Sometimes, if the breath is too fast, we might invite you to slow your breath, but stay with the story that you're watching or that's playing out. Stay with that feeling. But, like, let's say anxiety is a very shallow, fast breath. And if that comes up and you're not even consciously aware, it just your breath will start to change, or maybe there's something playing out in your experience. Um, and then we might ask you to invite you to deepen your breath, slow your breath, keep it deep, keep it slow, know you're safe. Um, and in that moment, that anxiety is still there, but you're repatterning it with your breath and saying, now you're safe. Yes, I see this feeling of anxiety, but I'm teaching you that now you're safe to feel because I can breathe through this in a different way than I normally do. And then that completes that cycle, that holding that was there incomplete playing out, and that it frees up that energy that was just working to contain it all that time. If that makes sense.
Mhm. No, I'm following. Yeah, that does. And so you said as a facilitator, you're trained to see the patterns. So when
Mhm.
you can tell by looking at someone, by the way they're breathing, what that's
Mm.
associated with, like you mentioned, like the anxiety or there could be anger and grief, you can notice that with watching
Yeah,
someone
that's
breathing
why I
pattern.
love this work. It's so fascinating. Yeah, the inhale is more how we receive life, how willing we're like to open up to power, to abundance, to love, to all the good things, right? But even the hard things, like, are we shying away from it, right? The exhale has to do more with acceptance, surrender, letting things be as they are, relaxing. So there's a component of breath work too, where we do our best to relax the muscles that are holding tension just as much as we're relaxing the breath. And so both parts can tell a really, really quick story that are, I find it's even deeper than words that you can see. And then the pauses also have meaning too, wherever the pause is. The pause is like at the top of the inhale, they might have difficulty trusting that they can let go. And if the pause is after the exhale, they might have difficulty trusting in life because they don't want to take in life. They don't want to take in, what life is giving them. So it all has meaning.
Yes.
Um, and it's beautiful and it changes. It can change from depending on what someone's moving through one session to the next. Yeah.
Mm, that's so interesting. Yeah. It's hard to put it into words. It's hard to, I think, understand it or fully comprehend it. So if you're listening to this for the first time, you've never heard of it, you don't even know what it is, it's okay if you're feeling confused or feeling like you don't
Mhm.
really know. It's just one
Yeah.
of those things that until you experience it, it starts to make a little bit more sense every time you do. I know that was true for me too, because I still was like, I can't fully explain it myself, even though I know it. It's hard to put into words for me because I'm not a facilitator. It's not my thing, right? But yeah, for anyone who's listening, I hope this is, yeah, kind of making sense a little bit. But if not, I think it's okay. So just, yeah.
Or one
Um,
of those things you just gotta experience if you
yeah, that's
it
what I
when
wanted to
and if
mention.
you're ready, you know?
A lot of this too, even the craniosacral, like I think there's some things you just have to experience
Yeah.
to actually fully understand it, and then it starts making sense. And you can link what you've heard through the speaking and the education piece of it into the actual felt experience, and be like, oh, okay, like that now puts words to what I'm feeling. Um, I'm curious, what do people mostly experience during or after a breathwork session?
During you can experience, the full range of emotions that a human can experience. You
Mhm.
can experience changes in temperature, so you can be hot or cold. You can have like tingly sensations. You can have like old pain, like old injuries can kind of come up, or like tension, depending on what your body is trying to share with you. But usually those things are gone by the end of the session. They're only there as you're breathing. And of course, because you are in an altered state, it can be quite spiritual. So you can have visions, you can talk to ancestors and
Mhm.
beings from other realms. The sky's the limit, but that's kind of the magic of it and why I love it.
I think even some people might be like, that sounds woo-woo or that sounds weird. And, all that gets a bad rap, but it's all energy. And if we're all energy, like it all, again, don't knock it until you try it. But if it's something that you're interested in, it's just one of those things. And like you said, you mentioned altered state a few times. And yeah, you're in an altered state, but you haven't taken anything illegal. There's no
Yeah,
substance in you, there's no drugs, there's no alcohol, there's nothing in you. It's literally your breath. So if you can comprehend that,
yeah,
that's very powerful. And how powerful is our breath? I speak about it all the time too. Is like our breath is what's carrying us through. From the moment we wake up, be thankful for your breath because you may not have it. And if you can think of that, a simple statement as that, it's like how powerful is our breath. And so going back to that, it can take you to an altered state. It connects you. It takes away everything, like Margaret was saying, everything up here, because we're so up here. Humans just function in the brain, right? And
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I would just wanted to share what the beauty is that when I love at the end of every breathwork session hearing what came up for somebody, because I know that when they're sharing at the end, it's coming from such a deep place. Like their body went through this thing where it's like every cell in their body received a message about whatever it is, if they were working through grief or working through like insecurity, like the insights people come out with are lived. They lived it through that journey. And so it's not up here. Like you can feel that they're sharing from the heart and from somewhere deeper.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me, what I think about when I think I'm in those states, whether I'm meditating or if I'm journaling or if I'm just so connected, like God, universe, source, whatever you want to call it, is like that is who what I feel that's what I'm connected to when I'm in there is my higher self. And it's again hard to explain, but that's what it feels like. And so this is all gone. And this is what our ego gets in the way of so many of our problems that when you're in that state, it really like you said, you used the word flashlight, I think earlier too. It shines a light on those areas and you do feel so connected. Like I've come out of a couple of sessions and I felt like I had taken a psychedelic, but I had taken nothing. I haven't even had an ounce of anything. And I remember coming out of it and I'm like, it was so trippy, but it was so powerful. And it opened up a lot and a lot can come up, right? Like we said. And so I think it's not for everyone, but but it is something that is a really good practice that you want to lean into because I do a lot of talk therapy and I love talk therapy. I think it's great, especially if you're new to it and you've never really opened up, you've never really accessed those emotions, those feelings, those parts of you, the wounds and the grief and all of that. But then the talk therapy can only take you so far. And that's why body based work, we call it somatic work, which is in the
Mhm.
body, and this is one of them. And there's so many different ways, right? You can do that. But breath work is one of those ways because, again, going back to our feelings, our emotions, everything stored in our body, the only way to access that is not through the mind, it's through the body. And so that's why
Yeah,
practices like this.
and the big thing is, like, the attitude you develop over time doing this practice regularly and or just more
Mm,
often is that you become less afraid of the unknown because you never know where these sessions are gonna take you, but
mhm,
you really start to embrace and, what comes up without judgment as best as we
mhm,
can. We try to be curious and give whatever it is our full attention and lean in rather than lean away. And the more we do this in breathwork practice, the more we can take this into our life. And maybe for me now, maybe one or two breaths into an area that I'm noticing with pain or with tension is just enough to give it like the attention that it needs. But I cultivated so much of my self-compassion and that ability to be with intensity, I guess, if you call it hard emotions and sensations, like a lot of it can feel intense, but cultivating that resilience to just be with it came from breathwork practice.
mhm. Yeah, you do build your resilience that way. And I want to touch on that actually, what you said. I think you and I have talked about it a little bit, but I know it's very common in the online space and, everything's just so readily available to us because it can bring up intense, really, really intense. Like, I don't want to sugarcoat it for anyone. I'm not selling it to like, oh, you guys should go try breath work because that's not me and I wouldn't do that. If it's something that you're interested in, yeah, for sure. But we're not here to push anyone to do that because I don't think that's very ethical. And I just don't believe in that kind of thing because it is very intense. And I've personally witnessed that. And it can take you to some really heavy places, right? And so I think the conversation that I've had and that is happening here and there is around the integration piece. So, like,
Yeah.
breathwork facilitators, you run circles, basically a circle meaning like a container. So you're there for a couple of hours or however long, and you do a debrief after, but it's a quick debrief. It's not therapy or it's not, any of that. And then then you're out the way and that's it, unless you come back or you do one-on-one sessions with a facilitator. But I'm curious, your thoughts on that integration piece is missing when
Oh
it
my God.
comes to breath work. And I think that can be a really slippery slope because if someone comes into a session and it takes them to some really deep stuff, some trauma comes up, some really intense grief, things that they never even knew, but now they've made conscious of. Um, how important do you think that integration and ongoing support after a session is,
Oh,
rather
it's
than people
huge. Yeah,
processing
like
on their own?
right. If I mean our community sessions, we're not necessarily we don't want people who've had like psychotic breaks or people with bipolar, people with a lot of serious mental health conditions, right? This is deep work and it can
Mm,
open up things and even people in active like addiction. Like you really need support ongoing if you're gonna do this work and we all know our bodies best. It's just this work is very deep, conscious connected breathing especially. So definitely working with like other people as part of your team if there's a lot you're unpacking and you haven't done this kind of stuff before.
mhm,
It's great. And that is something that I think we do sort of leave it up to the participants to share with us or share with people they love or their own teams if there's more coming up. But yes, the integration is huge because I feel like breathwork is great for opening the portal.
Mhm.
And then mindfulness and the other daily practices we have is what keeps it open and what keeps the
Mhm.
momentum going. And we can't just rely on these big, expansive experiences to give us what we need. They're great. I love breath work. I love breathing in community and one to one myself. But I'm also, I know enough now that I need to take what comes up in each session and apply it and tend to what came up and not just
Mhm.
leave it open without doing
Yeah.
anything with it. Yeah.
You've got yourself equipped, and so again, for anyone who's listening, it is a powerful practice if it's done right and if it's done with intention. And not every sessions, we're talking a lot about being in an altered state and having these big intense emotions. That's not always the case either. I think a lot of times we can chase for these big cathartic releases and breakthroughs, and myself included. I've been there, but it's not always like that. Sometimes the shifts and the awareness and whatever is coming up is very subtle. And so I think a lot of times we think, oh, well, that didn't work, or oh, that was like not good enough because I didn't have this full blown crying session or breakdown or what have you. Yeah, that might happen, but it also might not. And I think the piece I really want to emphasize here is how important it is to have other practitioners or a support system to lean on and to have in place because, like Margaret said, the breath work is the starting point, right? And to get into your body and to open yourself up. And then whatever comes up, it needs to be attended to because if you don't, it could be really dark and really heavy because there's so much left unprocessed and it's just gonna be there. And so I think it's just really important to have this conversation because that integration piece is so critical, period. Like you can't do this work and then not integrate. And that's with anything, whether it's breathwork, coming to therapy, there's integration is so important, right? We have to take action and have to lean into those tools and support and work through the emotions and the feelings that are coming up in sessions, whatever that is. And so I sort of really emphasize that because, yeah, some people go into breath work and then they're like, whoa, now what? And so I want you all to be very supported in that and finding yourself a therapist if that's what you need to process your emotions. There's other ways to do that. And I'm curious, do you offer integration sessions or follow-ups or anything? Is that a thing in the
It
breathwork
hasn't, like,
community?
been asked for yet from me. I know other practitioners who do. I
Oh,
think
okay.
yeah, I mean, the invitation is there. It could be something
Yeah.
that as well, and it's just something I'd also like to have more conversations about what integration
Mhm.
actually looks like, and,
Mhm.
that mindfulness and what that can look like. Just
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's always nice to talk about it and learn about it more because, like I said, I've done it, but also learning about it more too, and just opening up that conversation because a lot of people just don't know what is out there to support them. There's such a vast range of practices and modalities and tools and mindfulness and all of that that can help support us in our journeys. And that's why I wanted to have you on because I know you do a lot of that mind body connection and that body piece is so needed when it comes to just healing and support. Let's transition into closing. I have a few things that I wanted to touch on. You actually wrote this in your bio, but you had said something to me on our call. You said, be a lighthouse, not a lifeguard.
Yeah.
And it caught my attention. And you mentioned again in your bio, you said something about lighthouse. So I was like, okay,
Yeah.
there's something here.
Mhm.
Can you expand on that? Like, what does
Yeah.
that mean to you?
My god, that's like the stage that I'm in, like this it's I feel like this old identity of being a helper, a fixer. This was also from growing up in a home with addiction and wanting to help where I couldn't, right? Like to help me feel safe, let me help the adults around me, right? That's
Mhm.
the yeah, so I think that a lot of us take this role of overgiving or trying to rescue our loved ones who are struggling into our adult life or into our professional roles. And it's definitely a place where I've burnt out emotionally, more so. Like I'd feel exhausted at the end of a work day. And I think I was really becoming very hyper attuned to people's needs, maybe, and then putting some pressure on myself to have an outcome of like helping them in a certain way, especially in my personal life with loved ones who struggle. This has been like a big lesson to me. And I don't know if any of your readers have or your listeners have read the Let Them Theory book, but that book is amazing, by Mel Robbins. And, basically, she says the more you let people live their lives, the better your life gets. And it's true. Like, it's really um, about modeling the change that we want to see for the people that we care about, and not trying to fix them because everything's happening at its own timeline. It's okay to be triggered. We can't control the feelings that come up around seeing other people maybe not where we think they should be. But like it always comes back to like your own nervous system and your own ability to live the life that you want to. Like I have a family member who I think he struggles with insecurity, and then I have to look at myself. I'm like, where am I insecure? Oh yeah, there's some places where I'm holding back that I could, like developing more trust in myself. And um, but a lot of it is also like being a regulated presence in your own nervous system when you're around people. The best thing you can give them is like your silent you're listening, and also like your own state of like calm, where that can be like the way you're breathing in a room can change the energy of a room. And it's all like documented with the Heart Math Institute's been studying like coherent breathing and the way that somebody's breathing can change somebody else's breathing in the room. So I think that's what the lighthouse is somebody who is steady and who shines and is living their life with that. But that light is just illuminating and inspiring other people to move at their own pace and find their way just by you being you, which is this whole journey for me now. But right now I'm in the stage of kind of grieving that old rescuer who doesn't quite know what's on the other side of letting go of that role. And it might
Mhm.
not be necessarily that my outer roles have changed. I'm still doing massage, I'm still a breathwork facilitator, but the why behind it, the need to have an identity around being a helper, or the recognition with that, is dissolving. And I don't quite know what's on the other side. Of course, like my mind is like, "Oh, you'll feel free. It's just being, and you'll feel ease." But I'm still working through this part that's like, "Yeah, but what? Will I be safe if I'm not helping people?" So it's just it's yeah, I've been writing about it because it's just a way to channel like what I'm actually moving through right now, and it's a good reminder for me when I write these put together these inspirational little quotes and things on Instagram. It's really as much for me as it is for other people.
Mhm. I
Yeah.
love that. What's coming through too when I read that or when I think about that is like, we can't fix anyone. Everyone's on their own journeys. We have to take accountability. We have to take control of our own life, right? But we can shine the light. We can be the lighthouse. We can, show up and embody that and then have that mirrored to someone else. But at the end of the day, they're the ones that have to go through it. They're the ones that have to work at it and all of that. But when you think of lighthouse, just be the light and just show that and for people. And then the rest is up to everyone else. And I think a lot of people fall under that fixer people pleasing. For a lot of people, actually, felt like I needed to always be on and to solve everyone else's problems and put yourself aside. And I think, yeah, that might be great. But at the end of the day, you have to work through it. Like no one can be fixed, right? And so, yeah, I just thought that was really powerful.
Yeah, and I think there's a fine line, especially as you and I are in helping roles, to still help people, but it's the motive behind it that's changing. And like I don't know, the inner boundaries of like, what are we doing actually? What are
Mm.
we doing? Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll
it's
fig
such a bigger conversation.
yeah.
What'd you say, sorry?
Oh, no, I just said I'm still figuring that out. Before, I used to give a massage with like, "Okay, you asked me to fix XYZ. Let me show you I can." And now it's like, "Okay, I see that XYZ is part of bigger picture, a bigger story that's playing out for you. Can I just witness that with you, like with compassion while I'm giving you a massage?" So it's just
Mhm.
different.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I know we've talked about a lot of different things. Let's talk about tools and coping mechanisms. I always like to leave listeners with something practical, something they can take away with them. Yeah. So you talked a lot about, I think in our conversation too, and I know you shared a lot today too, is the breath, mind, and body. Like those are the three areas that you focus on, obviously, with the work that you do. Very much a holistic approach. We talk about the mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. What are some of your go-to practices, tools,
Great
coping
question.
mechanisms that have helped you, but that also you offer to your clients, whether that's with massage or with cranial, whether that's with breath work, anyone who's might be needing some support?
Yeah, I'll offer 2 things. One is like the everyday breath that I do whenever I'm in treatment or if I'm talking to someone, and just like that regulated, centered presence of using the breath. So the first one is just breathing in and out through your nose, silently, deeply, continuously. And if you start doing that, and like the silent part is huge because if we suck air in, it tends to come up from here. But when we breathe deep and silent and continuously, the breath actually comes from much deeper. It'll reach down deep in the diaphragm. And so the deeper we breathe, the more we are touching on like the parasympathetic nervous system, which sits quite low in the like lower part of the lungs, and that keeps us in that rest. Rest balances out that fight or flight. If we're breathing up here, this is the fight or flight. The sympathetic fibers sit up here. So just breathing deeper and slower through your nose, silently and continuously. Anytime you're walking in the grocery store, you're at a stoplight, you are working, having a conversation with someone, it keeps you in this. For one thing, you're very present, and the breath keeps you centered, and it keeps you in this coherent state, which is where your brain and your mind and your all of your systems are in harmony. So that's one. And the second one is more of an exploratory tool. So, if let's say picking an area in your body that might be holding some pain or tension, see if you can breathe as if every cell in that area is taking the breath. So, you're not breathing into that area. Let's say your neck and your shoulders are tight. So your shoulders are tight. That's pretty commonplace. Can you inhale as if the cells in your shoulders are taking the breath? That I feel like is such a direct way to use your breath to connect with your body and your awareness, and just notice what comes up. You might get a hit of something there, and then you don't have to do anything with it, but lean into it and just be curious.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Okay, last question before we do the rapid fire. So, looking back at your journey, when you reflect on everything that you've shared, and then obviously everything else, just your whole journey as a whole, what's the most meaningful lesson you have learned? And then, what's one message you'd want to leave with anyone who might be going through a hard season of life right now?
Say the most meaningful thing is to really accept this version of me right where I am, and not to chase this future healed version. You can get lost in that in the healing world. It's really like that self-acceptance. Um, yeah, that's and your second question?
What's one message you'd want to leave with anyone who might be going through a really hard season of
Uh,
life right now?
yeah, to know that, nothing is really permanent. Like life is always changing and we're often just caught in the downstream of a wave. And the more that we can trust in like healing happens in cycles and it's not linear, to know that like you will eventually come back out and there's a gift in that difficult place for you and you're going through that to reclaim something big, something powerful, something beautiful. That's going to open your heart, as hard as it might be right now, like to trust that there is, it's not forever and that it's part of your growth.
Yeah, it's everything's temporary.
Mhm.
Where can people find you? I'll put it in the show notes, but if anyone wants to reach out to you or connect with you, are you taking on new clients in either area?
I'm not online. I'm just working locally right now. I'm based in like Greater Vancouver. So, yes, I am taking craniosacral therapy focused intakes at the clinic that I work at, through massage therapy. So, it can still be billed under registered massage therapy.
Mhm.
Over at White Oaks, the clinic that I work at. And then for breath work, we have community circles every couple months out here as well, in person. And I do private sessions. So my website is thespaciousbreath.com. And I'm also on Instagram, The Spacious Breath.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll put that in the show notes, but it's always nice for people to just hear. And yeah, so if anyone is interested and wants to reach out, you can definitely do that. Yeah, thank you so much again for the conversation and for educating us and bringing your story into the Story Hour podcast community. It's been so great. Let's go into rapid fire. I'm basically just going to ask you this or that, and then you're going to answer, and then we'll close off here.
Okay.
Um, okay, one-on-one quality time or group hangs?
One on one,
Voice notes or long form text?
long form text,
Road trip or plane ride?
plane ride,
Save money or spend money?
spend money,
Take pictures or live in the moment?
live in the moment,
Always early or always late?
always early,
Podcast or playlist?
playlist.
Interesting. Cool, cool. Okay, well, that's a wrap for this episode for everyone who's listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Mm.